Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Creamsicle Chronicle podcast. My name is JT Olson, coming to you live from NFL Combine Week. Granted, I am nowhere near the Combine, but it's still the big topic of conversation. With me
Yeah,
is my co host, Garrett Ballard.
how's it going, guys? If you're watching live, I am cameraless. That will be fixed soon, hopefully. But yeah, combines, we're in the swing of it. We got what, 2 more days, right?
Yeah, I think I've got the schedule. I think offensive line goes tomorrow.
No, I think tomorrow's the running backs, wide receivers, and quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, it's offensive line interviews in that group that you mentioned works out,
Yes, correct.
which honestly, the workouts are fine. I like the raw data at the end of it. I don't really
Mhm.
care as much to watch it. But really, this is prime math bomb season. So if you're
Yeah,
not familiar with the relative athletic score, the RAS, brush up on it because it is everything this week.
yeah. I mean, NFL teams use it. It gives you a really good breakdown of what players are good athletes relative to their size, their height, their weight.
Their position.
Um, their position. Yep. We'll talk about that in a little bit for sure. But Kentley Platt, Math Bomb on Twitter, does a tremendous job summarizing how athleticism can be important when looking at players. And it's not like, I don't want to say like the end all be all, of course, because it's not. But if you're looking at players who are high impact, who are end up being superstars, more often than not, they are elite athletes according to Ken's RAS, his relative athletic score.
And for some teams, they can be the end all be all because some
Oh
teams
yeah,
have certain thresholds that a player needs to hit. Like, say you won't draft a corner who runs anything more than a 4.6. Anyone who runs more than a 4.6 is dead.
yeah. You see, like um, I shouldn't say it's not the end all be all. It's not the end all be all until a point. There's that cutoff, right? There's like it's like the arm length thing with the tackle, right? If you have below 32-inch arms, you're historically not gonna play offensive tackle that great. If you run a 4.75 or lower or something like that as a tight end, odds are you're really not going to stick. I think I saw Kent put out a tweet today saying, maybe it wasn't Kent, but it was someone referencing Kent's data, um, saying that pretty much all the elite tight ends in the league are elite athletes. And of course, there are elite athletes that have not become elite tight ends, but the ones that are superstars are also very good athletes. It matters, we've talked about it before. The Bucs are they like athletes. They go after guys that are strong, fast, agile, and it makes for better teams, better players.
Yeah, and we know if you want to be the Bucks' top pick in the draft, you have to score a 9 or higher, be in the 90th
Mhm.
percentile of athlete for your position. On a related note, RIP to our Darius Robinson dreams.
Yeah, it came and went just as fast as the other. I like what he can bring to a team. I like the strength, the length, the power. Uh, as a defensive tackle, great at elite, right? But
Yep.
where we envision him playing in this Bucks offense is defensive end with that kick inside flexibility, not a primary defensive tackle. And he tested average. And again, if this is like a fourth round pick, that's fine. You can swing for it. Um, but where he's been talked about and where he's been mocked, where I had him mocked as our pre combine mock draft, it's a no go. Not gonna go well. And they didn't even interview him. So um, we'll talk about it again later. But um, not interviewing someone is not always indicative of who the Bucks are interested in, but it also is.
Right, like the Bucks didn't interview Kalijah Cansey last year.
Right.
It's not always a priority. It's not always a necessity that they interview a guy, but they typically draft guys who they've interviewed.
Right.
So we'll we'll see. I mean, I think the athletic traits are much more telling about who will and will not be on the Bucks draft board. But there's a lot to it. There's a lot, and these are all just trends. There's nothing set in stone. They could draft Cam Kinchins in the first round and be graded like a 2 athlete. So
That would be crazy. I think I would
probably will not, but
really hate that.
anything is possible.
Yeah, I would. That'd be shocking. But again, like you said, anything's possible.
Honestly, that
And
score in itself was shocking to me.
it is. It is. And I mean, at the end of the day, the Bucks have these trends, right? They have these like you got to be a good athlete, but you hear everyone talk about it. It comes down to the tape, right? I mean, the athleticism is nice and it adds some context, but what you see on tape is what you're going to go off of.
Right, like Kalijah Cansey wasn't just great drafted because he was a great
No.
athlete. He had great tape.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing you could say about him is he was short.
Right.
So let's talk about some of these. Do you want to do the interview stuff first, or do you want to do the press conferences first?
I think that let's do the interview stuff because I think it's going to be pretty, or the press conference. Sorry, because I think it's going to be pretty quick. So let's get that out of the way.
Yeah. So one of the great things about the combine is we get to hear from all the general managers, all the head coaches. Basically everyone who is in the decision-making process is available to the media. So we get to hear what they're thinking, what they're putting out there to the world, and we get to interpret it how we will. So we got to hear from Jason Light, got to hear from Todd Bowles. Garrett, both press conferences were about 10, 12 minutes. What was some of the things that stood out to you?
I wish there were better questions. I'm gonna be frank. There are some, there are good questions all around it. Of course, they're gonna ask about Baker and Mike Evans and the contract details. That's understandable, but I mean, at the same time, they're at the combine. They're there to see the next generation of players, right? I don't think you really need to be asking about Sean Tucker.
Yeah. Even some of the draft related questions, like, what do you think of players not taking cognitive tests? Like, who really cares?
Exactly. Like that's the lowest thing on the totem pole for decision making in a draft. And you're not going to get them to reveal their war chest, of course. But I mean, if you were, and this has been a theme of the week, if you can ask good questions that are not just like blatantly rude or stupid or trick questions, and get a good answer, right? Like you're able to ask these guys about, what, like just literally made up in 2 seconds. Jason, historically, you guys have drafted elite athletes in the first round with your first pick. Do you foresee that, keep like how does athletics, how do these testing numbers play into your draft strategy? And maybe they give a little something, like, oh, being a good at, they give you something more than just like, yeah, we like them, because you can ask about a player, but they're not going to tell you what they think about the player. Not at all.
Some of the questions have been hilariously bad.
Oh my God.
Did you see the Caleb Williams question?
I don't even, that is just, oh my God. How did they
First
gotta
question, why are you afraid to compete?
like screaming, like, oh my gosh, it's so infuriating. They got to really hone in on who they're giving credentials to.
I know. Like, I always knew it was a little loose with the idea that I could be credentialed and go to this.
Yeah.
But man, at least I would act like a professional.
Yeah, like you got to act like exactly. Act like you belong, act like you know what you're doing. I get that there's like 100 people there, but you don't got to ask that question to get the floor. Getting the floor is just persisting with your question, right? Like it's not like screaming out a dumb question to kind of shock everybody and shock the person you're interviewing. It's more of just like, hey, I'm here to ask a question. Let me get it in. You just keep asking. You don't yell. You don't be rude. This is not a place. This is not a time to belittle a future first overall pick.
Or Drake May, do you believe in birds?
See, I don't mind those because like they're silly. At the same time, though, it's like at least I would rather those questions than the one that Caleb Williams got asked.
I don't mind them for like Jackson Owens from Montana State, where there's like two
Yeah,
guys at his
that's
press
fair.
conference.
That's fair. Yeah.
But like, who was that guy who didn't believe in space? Like, I don't think he had a lot of guys
That
interviewing
was
him.
also,
Like,
don't
Jay,
say that
it was
if
like
you're an
Jalen
athlete.
Owens.
Don't say that.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
It'll be fine. They're not going to take it into account, hopefully. But
What are your thoughts on 3 dimensions?
yeah, yeah. Sorry, we're getting off track. We're getting off track here, man. But yeah, I wish the questions were better for the Bucs guys specifically. I think if there was one thing I took away, it was that Jason Light. Someone asked him directly about looking at the O line and finding guys in the draft, and he was like, yeah. We're always looking in the trenches. He said trenches, not O-line, trenches, um, and looking for upgrades and depth. So maybe double dipping in the O-line this year.
Actually, I have that quote right in front of me because that was the one
Yeah,
that stood out to me as well.
it was the
So
only one about the draft.
yeah, it was a rough segment. So whoever was asked, if they'll look to add depth on the offensive line, and his quote was, "Absolutely, always looking to build the trenches, always looking for depth, always looking for upgrades." I think it's something that we'll definitely be looking at, not just the draft, but free agency through camp, and whatever avenues we have. We'll be looking there. And the text is great. It's a strong answer. But listening to it, his tone when he said that made
It's
me
very
feel like
straightforward.
it wasn't absolutely we're going to do that. It was absolutely we're going to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. He was very stern. He was like, yeah, that's happening. So, I mean, they probably won't double dip in the draft. Like I said, it'll probably be like free agency and the draft. But, and we've seen it before. This Bucs team really needs a position. They get a guy in free agency and they're able to push that need down the draft board a little bit, right? We love the top of the interior offensive line class, but there's some guys in round 3 that could, be day one starters. I'm looking at a guy like Dominic Pooney from Kansas. I'm looking at a guy like Christian Mahogany from Boston College. There's a lot of good names down there in like the round 3 range that if they get a guy in free agency, they might say, all right, we can draft the guy a bit later, train him up a little bit, and we can see what we got in a young guy after that.
Yeah. Jason Light is a master at that. In terms of layering his talent, he always gets a veteran, a guy who's been there, a guy who's done that, and he adds a young guy to learn from him.
Yep.
It was Vincent Jackson and Mike Evans. It was
Mike Evans, Chris Godwin.
Yeah. I mean, the whole offensive line, acquiring Ryan Jensen, who was, the top paid center on the market at the time, getting Tristan Wirfs and adding him with Donovan Smith, who wasn't a great talent, but he'd been around the league for a while.
Yep.
So I absolutely see them targeting this in free agency, adding a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry, and then double dipping and adding a guy in the draft like a Jackson Powers Johnson, a Troy Fontenot, really attacking that position. And that in turn will improve the depth, because then you take Robert Hainsey, who's been starting the last 2 years, and just like that, he's your backup.
Bingo. Look at that. Depth and upgrades.
Yeah,
pretty nice.
That was the other quote that stood out to me. I don't remember who it was, but one of the reporters asked on what he thinks separates the Bucs from teams that went further than them in the playoffs. And to sum it up, it wasn't as much as he thought, but the big answer there is depth. So making Robert Hainsey a depth piece, Aaron Stinnie a depth piece like he was on the Super Bowl run, that's going to be very appealing.
Yeah, for sure. So very few good things to take from that press conference. Like I'm looking at it, someone asked about Rachaad White, Sean Tucker, Trey Palmer, Cade Otton, Chris Godwin, 2 about Chris Godwin, the role of the fullback in the modern NFL. Like, what are we doing?
Very specific question.
Yeah, I'm just okay.
Like, who is writing the fullback feature piece for their website?
Yeah, it's a very good question to ask. Might be one to read when it comes out. Quotes from Jason Light, but yeah, honestly, do you have any other quotes?
Though that was really it from Jason Light.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you
O
get
line,
anything
O
from
line, O
Bowles?
line. A little. So I got
Hopefully.
2 takeaways from Bowles.
Yeah.
One, let me find the quote. So I think one was how much input has Liam Cohen had in the draft process so far.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the guys from Pewter Report that asked that.
Yeah.
And basically he
Shocking.
said he's had no input so far. He's still learning his way around the facility. He hasn't really got to sit down and meet with the staff and kind of have those conversations yet. So as much as we're talking about Ray Davis will be a great fit, the Kentucky quarterback will be, a late round target, Liam Cohen hasn't had any conversations, any input in the draft process yet.
Yeah, and I mean that checks out, right? Like unless you're a head coach, you're really not going to get involved immediately in the draft process. That's a couple steps down in your onboarding process. But I mean we've seen some of his old players already like talking to the Bucs, so we'll see. But I think another like the big one that he talked about was someone just was like, how does the combine help you evaluate players, right? And he was like, well, he reverted back to what I said earlier. It's the tape. If you see a guy run a 4.2 out here, you're not going to say, I want him. You're going to go to the tape and watch and make sure it shows up there and that it's good. And if the tape's good, you can figure it out. Like you said, I'm going to read it verbatim. The athleticism, what they do at the combine, helps to see how versatile or how stiff or non-stiff they are. But if the film does not show the speed or the film does not show the tenacity or tackling, the combine doesn't really matter. The film is what matters, people. At the end of the day, like we said, these athletic scores, they provide context and good thresholds of whether or not you might be more likely to make it in like the upper echelons of your position. But at the end of the day, if the film's good, you got a shot.
Yeah, and a vast majority of the time, the athletic testing is only going to verify what you saw on film.
Correct.
Like Theo Johnson just tested out of this world. He got a perfect 10 RAS score. And I thought to myself, yeah, that feels right.
Checks out. Yeah. You see it.
I mean, it's rare you're surprised. And when you are, you go back and you rewatch that prospect and say, where's the disconnect?
Yeah. I agree. But I think that's going to wrap us up for the interview, like the pressers, right?
I did have one more thing from Bowles. So, Jason Light kind of verified, hey, offensive line is going to be a big target for us. Yeah. Todd Bowles verified the other big target, which we already knew, edge rusher.
Yeah.
I think it was his last question he was asked on the importance of pressuring the quarterback. And basically, sometimes you have to show pressure, sometimes you have to bring pressure, sometimes you don't bring pressure. Basically, long and the short of it, they have to generate pressure because their front four can't get enough pressure.
Yeah. I mean, the last sentence, you have to have the players to execute it.
Yep. And they're getting there. Vita Vea, really good player. Kalijah Cansey looks like a really good player. Yaya Diaby looks like a really good player. Defensive line usually constitute 4 pass rushers. So you got 3.
Yeah.
Might want one more on the outside.
And with a 3-4, sometimes it's 5, because you got the 3 down linemen and then the 2 outside backers who, might drop into coverage. Both might rush, but usually 4, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in between any of them. How they've handled their combine so far backs up these quotes, and I'm very interested to see the offensive line interviews, because what's the number of interviews we get, officials, like formals that teams are permitted?
I want to say it's 30.
Is it? I thought it was like 45.
Then I'm not totally sure. I thought it was 30 is the number I had in my head, but I have no firm basis for that. You Google it. I'm going to count how many they've had so far.
Oh, I was counting. Sorry. Here. Okay, I'll Google it.
Okay.
But yeah, either way, like your teams are allotted a certain amount of like formal. I think it's formal and informal are the terms, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. At the combine, 18 minutes long, I think. Um, and once you've hit them, that's all you can do. Let's see.
I hope it's more than 30 because they're at 29 right now.
Well, 30 is like the top 30 visits after the combine. So
That's probably
between
what
the
I'm thinking.
combine and the draft, 45 formal interviews. So you said they're at 29.
Yeah. So they're gonna formally interview like every offensive lineman.
They're going to formally interview about 16 offensive linemen, which is a lot. So that shows you like they're looking there pretty early, probably. So I mean that kind of just segues us into it. Um, the people that they've interviewed, right? Do you want to start on the offensive side of the ball since we were just talking about offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, offense is where the Bucs are weakest. That's the positions they really need to attack in the draft.
Right.
Potentially quarterback if Baker Mayfield leaves, or if he doesn't leave, they might want a developmental guy.
Yep.
A tight end, they said they want to get a compliment to Kate Otten, a compliment to Rashad White, offensive line, of course. I mean, there's a lot of things to address on the offense.
Yeah, there are. And just starting at the top, we're using the Pewter Report. At least I am. I think JT, you're probably looking at it too, right?
Yeah, this is the best piece of content Pewter Report puts out
It's
all
great.
year. And that is in no way a shot. They put out great content all year round, but I live on this page.
It's great. It's also for the Bucs, like we said, it's very poignant and informative. But it's just the Pewter Report Combine interview tracker. They have all the players they've met with formally or informally. Formally, players are going to be bolded, showing you who they're spending more time with. But the Bucs haven't shied away from talking to some quarterbacks. They seem to know that they're going to be out of the race for those top three. Because they haven't even informally met with any of them, and to me it kind of looks like they're looking down on the like that third tier of quarterback.
Yeah, so they talked to 5 quarterbacks. 4 of them were formal interviews.
Yes.
And they're all kind of in a similar range because you got J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix Jr., Spencer Rattler, and Michael Pratt. And J.J. McCarthy, maybe a guy who slides to the late first where you're picking at 26.
I think
Rattler
he's
and
going to
Penix,
slide higher than that.
where do you think he's going to go?
I think he's probably top half of the first round.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think like 11, 12, 13, that's his sweet spot.
Yeah.
But Penix and Rattler, those are probably second round guys. Pratt, they're probably a third round guy. So I think they know they're going to live kind of maybe late first, but more likely day 2 if they go quarterback.
Yeah, my like the big thing with me is like, it's hard to find a good starting quarterback in the league, right? And obviously the priority is going to be keeping Baker and his and everyone else, but if that doesn't happen, it's going to be tough next year. And if it does happen, are you willing to sacrifice that top 75 pick to draft a quarterback, right? You still have Kyle Trask under contract, and I know he's not great. He's not good, right? But are you willing to do that again instead of drafting like a tight end or a linebacker or an offensive lineman, defensive lineman? In my book, if I were the GM, no, it's not. I would not draft that quarterback there. If you really want to find a backup, look for one in free agency, in my opinion.
I absolutely agree, which, based on the guys they're interviewing, this makes me feel like it's a due diligence kind of thing.
I'm with you.
If Baker Mayfield walks out the door, we need a quarterback. We're not getting one of the big 3, probably not getting McCarthy either, but maybe who can walk in as a rookie and start for us? Maybe a Michael Penix, maybe a Spencer Rattler. I think this is kind of your just in case Baker goes kind of interviews.
I'm with you. I agree. I do agree. I think that's exactly what this is. Gosh, I accidentally just closed the page. All right, we're back.
That's
Um,
okay. I can keep us rolling right along to
go for
wide receiver.
it. Yeah. Um, Surprising amount of slot guys to me.
Honestly, it's a surprisingly small amount of interviews here in
It's
general.
not a lot. You're right.
And I thought this was kind of a position of need. You
Yeah.
know, Godwin's getting a little older. He's going to be a free agent after next year. Evans is in his early 30s. Kind of thinking about that next wave. So to see, what, 9 wide receivers interviewed, it's a
Yeah.
low number.
It is a low number, but there's one thing that stands out about all these guys, and it's explosiveness. These guys are some athletic players, right? Like McMillan, he might not be like that top end speed, but he's got great agility. Keon Coleman wins at the catch point. Brian Thomas, just another, explosive athlete, route runner. Cornelius Johnson, speed. Malik Washington, elusiveness. That guy is as shifty as they come. Anais Smith, another one who's like a little um, lightning bolt, just shooting all over the field. Like a lot of guys that um, bring more athleticism to this offense.
One name who actually isn't on this list, but did meet with the Bucs, according to him,
Yeah.
is Lad McConkey. He
Yes, he
said he
said he
met with
met with
all 32,
32. I think it was a combination of the Senior Bowl and the Combine, but he's met with the Bucs in some capacity at some point.
which we kind of expected. Hiring Georgia's wide receiver coach,
Right.
that's a natural connection to make. Lad
Right.
McConkey, really, really good player. So he's kind of in that same Keon Coleman, Brian Thomas tier, who could be a late first round pick.
Yeah, and Pewter Report notes that Jalen Polk has said he'd met with a lot of teams, but could not remember if the Bucs were one of them.
How do you envision Jalen Polk in the NFL?
Slot.
It's that guy, yeah. That's how I see
Yeah,
him too. Kind of Chris Godwin mold.
yeah, yeah. Just like that move to 6 guy.
Yeah, not he's not slow, but he's not super explosive. He's got great
Right.
hands.
Yeah, pretty much. He'll get you what you need.
Yeah.
Moving just down the line, uh, running backs. Only 2 formals, which is nothing crazy, but a good chunk of informals as well. The 2 formals though, love to see it. Ray Davis, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of my both of ours, I think, but I've been on the Ray Davis to Tampa Bay train for a while now. I think he's a really good player, and I love to see that the Bucs, they might agree. Um, and the other formal interview that the Bucs have made with a running back is USC running back Marshawn Lloyd.
Marshawn Lloyd, I think, is super interesting because
Mm.
USC's offense is awful. Like, I hate everything they
Yeah,
did with him,
yeah,
but he's explosive. I think he's got really good physical tools, and really, he kind of fits the mold the Bucs are looking for. Is a more of a between the tackle physical worker.
yep,
Running backs haven't done their measurements yet, but I think he's going to measure at a pretty good size. Not huge, but bigger than say Chase Edmonds.
yeah. They do their testing and measurements tomorrow, so we'll see for sure. But I agree. I'm just gonna real quick run down the list of informals.
It's a pretty big list.
It's a pretty big list. Yeah. Braylon Allen, big
Big dude.
dude, right? Big dude. Kendall Milton, Cody Schrader, Isaiah Davis, Kamani Vidal, who JT talked about last week in his mock draft. Uh, Dylan, is it Laub? Laub?
I think
He was at
Loud.
the Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah,
Um,
more of a receiving back if I remember right.
yes, yes. Mayan Williams, Jahar Johnson, Will Shipley, Amani Bailey, and George Halani. Um, a lot of running backs that they've talked to in some capacity. So, again, this is one of those positions that you can identify and say, yeah, they're looking here, right? There are a handful of positions that they've interviewed a good amount of people in, and this is one of them.
I gotta say, Ray Davis had the perfect look today. Like in
Yeah,
terms of aesthetics, he had like the '90s boxer in training look kind of going on.
yeah,
Like he had like the wool cap that's rolled up a little bit, a hoodie with the sleeves cut off and a t-shirt under it. Dude just looks like he's ready to go to work.
for sure. I definitely hated the quote. he just like people talked about the Florida game all day, which drives a dagger into my heart. But I mean,
Sure.
he ran for 300 yards. But it is what it is.
You just know you're getting a warrior right there. Lived it firsthand.
Yeah. Okay. Moving down this list, it jumps to safeties.
Is that the
I'm gonna.
last? No,
I'm
we have
not
one
gonna.
more offensive position
Yeah,
before
I'm
we
gonna
go
jump down to
defense.
tight ends.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stick with the offense, and this is another position that the Bucs might be looking at. So they've had 3 formal interviews: Florida State Jaheim Bell, Washington Devin Culp, and Ohio State Cade Stover.
So I haven't watched Culp, but
Me neither.
he ran really, really well.
Yeah, a little bit.
PFF College tweeted out it was the 4th fastest time by a tight end in combine history.
Run a 4.47, was it?
Yeah, dude was flying.
Yeah, 4.47's no joke. That's insane for a tight end. So and where does he go to school? None other than the Bucs' favorite West Coast establishment, University of Washington.
Yeah, I think he's one I'm gonna have to check out after the combine.
Yeah, I am as well. This is like, when Todd Bowles was like, yeah, we see him test well and we go and check the tape. This is one of them. Obviously, they've checked the tape. They know about him because they formally interviewed him. But yeah, pretty crazy stuff. I'm trying to find, here it is. So he didn't jump or do agilities, but for his composite speed grade from RAS Math Bomb, he scored a 9.91 on the 40, 10 on the 20. Oh, wait, that's definitely not right. Just say it's a 9.91 because the splits are a bit weird. And then his size grade is not great. He's 6'3", 231 pounds. So he's a undersized receiving tight end is what you got there.
And this is a really cool tight end class because even the 4th fastest time in combine history for a tight end, he's like an underlying story of athletes at the tight end position.
Yeah. Next, I mean, the first name on this list that's an informal interview is Ben Sinnott, who tested like he jumped 40 inches in the vert, and then like 11 in the broad, something crazy. Like this is just an otherworldly athletic tight end class.
And then the guy right under him, Theo Johnson,
Yeah,
was right behind him in the jumps, and he got a perfect 10 on his RAS.
Yeah, it was pretty it's a crazy athletic class.
It's like it was Sanat and Johnson alone at the top in all the rankings, and then there was a sizable gap, and then the rest of the tight end class.
Yes. It's pretty insane.
It really is. And then that doesn't even talk about guys like Eric All from Iowa, who's a really nice receiving tight end.
Yeah.
AJ Burner, who's kind of a well-rounded blocking tight end. Like there's a lot of depth in this tight end class, and obviously there's one superstar at the top. But I think there's going to be a lot of good players to be had later on.
I mean, Jaheim Bell ran a 4.61, which is outstanding for a tight end. But it's like, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah, he was underwhelming because there were so many great athletes.
And it's not like he's underwhelming. It's just like everyone else is overwhelming. It's nuts. But it's a good year to need a tight end for sure.
Yeah, especially a guy who is a number 2 tight end who could emerge to be a number 1 down the line.
Yep. This is Peter Report in a little paragraph underneath said that Ben Sinnott said he had a lot of contact with the Bucs at the Senior Bowl prior to his informal with them at the combine. So,
and we know the Bucs love Senior Bowl players.
Oh yeah, it's their favorite. But that's all we got for the offensive side of the ball right now. Moving to the defense, obviously the offensive line meetings will come up tomorrow, but we can't speak on them yet. Yeah, anyone other than I mean, Jackson Powers Johnson, Zach Frazier, probably Cedric Van Pran,
Graham
Mahogany. Graham Barton,
Mahogany, Christian
Pooney,
Haynes,
Christian
Poon. There's
Haynes.
just a ton of them.
So many. So many.
This is a great year to need a guard.
Are there any guys that you're like that are maybe unfamiliar with that you might be looking out for?
Let me pull up my list here.
Yeah.
All those guys are high on my
Of course.
my list, except for Van Brand, who I'm not in love with. He's not.
I
I'm
know,
not a
but
Van Brand fan.
they'll probably meet with him.
Two guys who are not small name guys, but you didn't mention in the long list of offensive line guys. Troy Fontenot from Washington.
Of course. Yeah.
That's my guy. He's, my preferred pick at 26 if he's there.
Yep.
And the other big one who could be on the Bucs radar, depending on what they want to do with their offensive line this year, Cooper Beebe from Kansas State.
Yeah, I had him in my my mock draft, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was my how's it going, Sean? What are you doing? Yeah, he's huge. You can't move him like at all. Yeah, I would love to see them meet with Beebe. But that's going to kind of do it for the offense. Anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I think they're going to attack offensive line. I think they're going to look to add depth players at tight end and receiver and running back. I think they're going to really go for maybe 2 defenders early on, maybe 3. I don't know, there's a lot of ways they can go, but I think they're going to hit offense early and often.
Yeah. All right. Transitioning to defense. We're going to start with the safeties. Okay. Only 3 formals, but a good handful more of informals. We have Javon Bullard and Tyke Smith, the pair of Georgia safeties, were both formal, as well as Utah safety Cole Bishop. And then informals included Jaden Hicks, Bo Brady, Malik Mustafa. I'm a big fan of him. Dijon Anthony, Jay Key, Tyler Owens, Damani Richardson, Patrick McMorris, Evan Williams, and Andre Sam.
It's a lot of safeties.
It's a lot of safeties, man. We know that they're looking at the secondary too, right? Like the Bucs, they have a lot of good players at positions, but the depth is not there, right? Like I think safety's one where you can turn to in free agency and then look for depth in the draft.
Well, and we know obviously Antoine Winfield Jr. We know what he is. After that, your most sure thing is Chris Isian, who was an undrafted rookie last year.
Yep.
Played mostly in the nickel. So, yeah, we got some things to figure out at safety, and maybe that involves moving Isian back to more of a full-time safety role and drafting a nickel. Maybe it keeps him in the nickel and you draft a safety. You got options. You got flexibility. So it makes sense that they're doing a lot of due diligence, so they really have an informed decision before they say, hey, we're going to move you back or we're going to keep you there.
Yeah. They love to shuffle around what they're doing. That's no secret. So, I mean, the more pieces in the backfield, the more looks they can throw out on offense and just try and confuse things.
Yeah. This group makes me very aware I have a lot more work to do in the safety class.
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of like that day 3 safety class, like that day 3 range of safeties is pretty crowded.
Yeah, and I don't love a lot of the guys at the top. Like, was not in love with Javon Bullard, was not in love with Cole Bishop. I've only just begun Jaden Hicks.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not impressed with this group of safeties from what I've seen. I really like the 2 at the top with Newbin and Kitchens. But this group they're looking at here, it's just kind of, from what I've seen, it's okay. It's not great.
Kitchens tested terribly today. So,
very bad. But I really like his tape, so I'm going to go back and rewatch him. His tape I like.
Yeah.
He's overly aggressive sometimes, but I'd rather him be over aggressive than under aggressive. And for a guy who I view as a strong safety, you know what? He's really good in coverage for a strong safety role, who's more of a box player.
Sure.
He's not Ryan Neal.
No. But yeah, that's it for the safeties. A list longer than the safeties is corners. I think that's just the way it goes at the combine. There are more corners at the combine than safeties. But again, only 3 formals, and then the rest are informals. So the 3 formals that we got are Kamari Lassiter from Georgia, Drew Phillips from Kentucky, and Nate Wiggins from Clemson. Um, those are some top end names.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with Phillips, but Nate Wiggins is my corner too,
Yeah,
and
they
I
ran a
could say him going
4.29.
as early as 17. Yeah, 4.29, super fast. He's 6'1". He's great in coverage. He's also 170 pounds, which is concerning.
Correct. Yeah, we know the Bucs like that big physical corner, so I don't know how that'll hold up, but
And he's not physical. I would go as far as
no.
say he's soft,
Yeah,
but
I would
he's
agree. And
great in coverage.
oh, he's fantastic. Yeah. Um, rolling down the longer list of informals, we got Jerry Jones from Florida State, TJ Tampa from Iowa State, Kyrie Jackson from Oregon, Chris Abrams Drain from Missouri, Max Melton from Rutgers, who had a outstanding day. You know, last week we were talking about Mike Sainristil from Michigan. Um, the Buccaneers did not meet with him today. Max Melton had similar numbers, better numbers, and a meeting. Star that one maybe. Um, next is Cam Hart from Notre Dame, Dwight McGlothern from Arkansas, Desmond Jones from Oregon, Willie Drew from Virginia State, Kamal Haddon from Tennessee, MJ Devonshire from Pittsburgh, Marcellus Dial from South Carolina. Oh my gosh, Decameron Richardson. I'm very sorry if I pronounce that incorrectly. Ryan Cooper from Oregon State and Ryan Watts from Texas. So
Some of those
long list of
are
corners.
absolutely made up. I don't believe all of those are humans.
Yeah, that's a lot of names, that's for sure. Oh, and here we go. Uh, Missouri cornerback Ennis Rakestraw and Auburn cornerback DJ James have meetings with the Bucs on Thursday. Had meetings on the Bucs on Thursday, but they were not sure whether it was formal or informal.
So that's a lot. Rakestraw's another one who's possibly going to be a first round pick. Didn't have a great testing day athletically,
Yep,
but
yep.
he's a good player.
And DJ James, the Bucs love that Auburn DB connection.
This is a deep, diverse group of corners.
Mm.
Like they're all over the place with this corner class. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, it's a weird combination, that's for sure. You got your skinny, fast guys, and then you got your bigger, slower guys with who are more physical, but bit weird, that's for sure.
One name who does stand out to me is
Yeah.
Cam Hart from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I was impressed with him at the Senior Bowl. I think he tested better than I expected him to. He's kind of in that similar mold as a Carlton Davis. He's a bigger corner, and if the Bucs are looking to move on from Carlton, obviously Zion McCollum will move into that starting role, but Cam Hart could be that developmental guy to kind of fill a similar role down the line.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Sorry, I'm trying to. Linebackers are next.
This was my favorite group.
Yeah, I'm with you. Three formals, but they were heavy hitters, that's for sure. We got Junior Colson, who's probably my linebacker one. Nathaniel Watson from Mississippi State and Cedric Gray from North Carolina. JT, why don't you give us a rundown on Gray?
Yeah, Cedric Gray is probably my linebacker one.
Yeah.
Him, Junior Colston, and the guy you're going to talk about next, they're all very close as the top three. Like them all. But Gray, he's a little undersized, but he's super quick. He's got a lot of potential as a coverage linebacker, and he's just all over the field. He is a tackling machine. He's a playmaker. He is very much in the same mold as Levante David. I've listened to an interview in the last couple of days. He's very mature. He seems very intelligent. He is one of those guys who's kind of going to come in and be another quiet leader. And everything I've seen, everything I've heard, really, really like what Cedric Gray brings to the table.
Yeah, I mean, you say undersized, but that's becoming the new norm, right?
It is. It's Fred Warner-ish size.
Yeah, linebackers are becoming lighter and faster. I mean, Coulson is sub 240, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he came in
Peyton,
a lot smaller than expected.
yeah, he did. I'm going to go ahead and read the rest of these meetings so we can talk about this next guy. Um, First on the informal list is Peyton Wilson from North Carolina State, Butkus Award winner. J.D. Bertrand from Notre Dame, Jalen Ford from Texas, Tatum Bethune from Florida State, Darius Muasau from UCLA, Curtis Jacobs from Penn State, Jordan McGee from Temple, Easton Gibbs from Wyoming, John Trey Hunter from Georgia State, from Tampa, by the way, Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M, Michael Barrett from Michigan, and Tyron Hopper from Missouri.
And Peyton Wilson
Yeah,
had a good day.
yeah, he had a
Ran in the
great day.
4.4s.
Big, yeah. I mean, the coverage on tape is really good, so you can understand where that range and like that speed comes into play. But to see it, in a straight line is nice, of course.
Yeah, and he's had a lot of injuries in the past. I think he's had some off the field issues.
Yeah.
But just on play, he has a very strong case to be linebacker one in this class as well.
And from interviews that he was talking about with media, he was saying a lot of teams are thinking that the injuries are behind me. Like it's not a thing that's going to define me and keep me down going forward. So, interesting to see if the Bucs are one of those teams.
Yeah, I think he would be a very good pick for them.
Yeah, he's a good player.
And then another name you mentioned, Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah,
A lot of people think he could be linebacker one. I'm not as high on him, but
I'm with you. Yeah.
there are a lot of people who really like Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah, he's like if a lot of people are thinking he's like could go first round.
Ooh, man, that's cringy.
Yeah, which I'm not a fan of either. But
even second round, he probably wouldn't be my cup of tea where the Bucs pick.
I'm very and who's the other one? The Clemson Trotter. I'm not a fan of Trotter either.
Mm-hmm.
I like Colson, Gray, Wilson way more. That's for
Oh
sure.
yeah, not even in the same stratosphere.
Yeah.
I even
And
like
then,
the other Michigan linebacker, Michael Barrett, more than I like Edgerrin Cooper.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't watched Barrett yet, but yeah. But again, there's another little note. Notre Dame linebacker Maris Leofu believes he met with the Bucs informally, but wasn't quite sure. So thanks to Pewter Report for the note on that.
Let's skip over the next group because I
I'm
want to end with that one.
I was gonna say let's do D line and then edge.
Yeah.
So same page. D line, smaller group, much smaller. Why did I just get a pop up from WebEx? Sorry. Okay, much smaller group of defensive linemen, but there are 4 formal interviews. So a bit more of a higher concentration of higher percentage of formal interviews to informal. It's they only interviewed 8 D linemen and half of them are formal. First one being maybe one of the bigger winners of the week, Florida State defensive lineman Braden Fisk. Next, do you know how to say this last name?
I think it's Arohoro.
I have never been able to say it. Like I've listened to how it's said, and I just can't get my tongue to make the noise. The Clemson D lineman Rook Oroaro. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Michigan defensive lineman Chris Jenkins, and then Texas A&M defensive lineman McKinley Jackson. Those are the 4 formal interviews that the Buccaneers have made with defensive linemen, and then the informals are Brandon Dorless, Abe Hall, Marcus Harris, and Justin Eboigbe.
So we had talked about last week, someone is going to test out of this world at the combine. Someone who we're not even thinking about is going to make himself a top 50 pick. That's Brandon Fisk.
Braden Fisk, man, he's undersized, but again, we've seen the Bucs look at that mold recently, as soon as last year, and not really worry about it. He's shorter, but he's stout, right? Like he's around 300 pounds, I'm pretty sure. And he's quick, man. You see the speed on tape. I don't know if the power is quite there, but the speed is prominent.
Yeah, he measured in 6'3", 292,
Okay.
a RAS score of 9.88.
Yeah.
So nearly, he's in the 98th, nearly 99th percentile of defensive tackles ever.
Yeah, that's pretty good, JT.
Yeah, not too shabby for a guy who I was not even thinking about a week ago.
Yeah, and I think I recall seeing somewhere that um someone said Jason Light was saying that they're in a good spot to take best player available. I'm not sure if I made that up. Um, but I don't think this is a first round player. Um, Probably like you said, maybe day two, maybe not maybe round two. Maybe if they want to trade back towards the back half, the top half of round three, maybe right there. But yeah, he made himself some money this week. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the guy who I really like on this list is Chris Jenkins from Michigan.
Yeah, I'm with you.
He isn't a great pass rusher, but he looks like he's going to be an elite run defender. He just stacks and sheds blocks like it's nothing. No running back sneaks by him. He is exactly what I would want Logan Hall to be, except he's already it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is exactly what you said. I think Logan Hall's profile is too different. Like it's very much so geared to pass rush, and I mean they corrected it with the Kansas pick, but um, yeah, it'd be nice.
But he's that same position. He's kind of he's
Yeah,
not
he
really a
is.
3 tech. He's not really a
No,
defensive
he's
end. He's
like
a
that.
5 tech.
Yeah, he is. You're right. It is that same position, but um,
Different
yeah,
different mold of
different
the
mold,
position.
same position. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's different prototypes. That's all.
But if
Uh,
if Logan Hall could develop into Chris Jenkins, I would be very happy with that pick.
yes, 100%. Um, and I think this last position group. Um, I think we're looking at the position the Bucs are drafting in the first round. I don't know if I'm alone here, but the edge rusher position um, had a lot of standouts this week. We know the Bucs are looking heavily at it. They didn't interview a ton of people, but we know based on the people that they're interviewing, they are looking to address it early.
Mm-hmm.
They had four formal interviews. One, Laiatu Latu from UCLA, Adisa Isaac from Penn State, Chop Robinson from Penn State, and Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. Right after that, Jared Verse from Florida State, Austin Booker from Kansas, Gabe Murphy from UCLA, Xavier Thomas from Clemson, Mohamed Kamara from Colorado State, David Ukwobu from Houston, and then Eric Watts from UConn. Um, Sorry, I didn't brush up on my pronunciations before this.
See, I was just
Um,
thinking, way to
I
go
should
for
have.
powering through these names. That hats off to you.
I
These are
usually
impressive
am
attempts.
I'm usually pretty good about making sure I'm good with my pronunciations, but I just forgot today. But those are some heavy hitting names, man.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people believe Latu is the best pass rusher in this draft. If not for his injury history, he
Yeah,
potentially could be a top 10 pick.
I'm one of them, by the way.
Mm. Yeah,
I think
he's
he's
really
very
good.
sound. Yeah. Um, and then you got guys like Adisa Isaac from Penn State. He's probably a day two pick. Job Robinson, who's one of the freakiest athletes ever seen at the position. And then Marshawn Nealand, again, freak athlete, right? Bit of a lower level of competition, but that athleticism says a lot.
Which, side note, Western Michigan, I don't know what they're doing with their strength and conditioning program, but damn.
Pumping out some
Because
dudes.
Braden Fisk was a Western Michigan transfer this year, wasn't he?
Correct.
So,
Yes.
two of the most impressive athletes at the combine coming straight out of Kalamazoo.
Yeah. Pretty good, man.
Yeah, that makes me very uncomfortable as arch rival Central Michigan graduate.
It's yeah. It's I want to note one thing, and that is the Latu and Chop Robinson dichotomy, right? Latu, great athlete still, refined pass rusher, right? He knows what he's doing. Chop Robinson, freak athlete, kind of all over the place. Like there's some development that needs to be made there. I am not the biggest Chop Robinson fan.
I like his tools. I think he could be really good. His hands aren't good yet, which is a
Right.
problem.
Yeah.
I wish he would have done the agility drills, and I wish he would have done a bench press.
Yes.
Because if your calling card is athlete, you've got to out athlete some really good athletes, so you better do all the drills.
Right.
And he did really well. He got a 9.5 for his RAS, but he's a little shorter armed, he's a little lighter, not as good a run defender. Wish he could have shown some power with his bench press. And I like his bend, but some people have said it's not elite bend. I really would have liked to see what he could do with his testing there.
Yeah, I'm see, my whole thing is like one rule of scouting, especially with the combine, you can't count things twice. The athleticism is like the first thing you notice about Chop Robinson, right? So these speeds and like this explosiveness and it's nothing new, right? We knew it was coming the entire way. This changes really nothing in the way I think of Chop Robinson, if I'm being honest. I think this is like it's another Joe try and shank a situation. The ceiling's higher with Robinson because of the athleticism, but are you going to be able to develop him, right? I mean, you have proven it's like, I don't know. It's just a risk. It's a big risk. And I think if you're sitting there at 26 and a guy like Latu or even Jared Verse is sitting there as well as Chop Robinson, you have to take either Latu or Verse.
Yeah, Chop had a great workouts, but it was almost an underwhelming day for him because of how impressive the other top edge rushers looked.
Yeah.
Because if it was always these guys are better players, but Chop's a freak athlete, and now these better players are also freak athletes, it really eliminates any kind of gap there might have been and puts a gap the other way.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I'm it's a very interesting top of the D-line class for the Bucs because there are a lot of different profiles. But I know which one I favor.
Well, I want to say I think Latu and Jared Verse, the big two guys they interviewed, will be gone by the time the Bucs pick.
I do too. I would presume so. But
and Dallas Turner, who also tested really well, long gone.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I also think that, and then that's when we start getting into like all right, Marshawn Nealon round 2. And like Zach Frazier's round 1, Jackson Powers Johnson round 1. You know, we look at the guys that we haven't interviewed yet, the Bucs haven't interviewed yet, or an Austin Booker, or a guy that I like really refined, but he didn't test is Jonah Ellis from Utah. A lot of talented pass rushers down in that day 2 range. Yeah, that's just kind of where I stand. Chop Robinson wouldn't be my favorite use of that first round pick.
I would agree, but I would also say he's probably the most likely of the people who will be there.
In terms of the edge rushers? Yeah, I'm with you for sure.
One name I want to mention who Pewter Report mentioned in a little sentence after.
Yeah.
Chris Braswell and Solomon Byrd met with the Bucs, but couldn't recall if it was formal or informal.
Yeah.
I really like Chris Braswell as a second-round pick.
Me too.
Don't love him at 26.
No.
But if you can get him at 57, I'd be very happy with that.
Great run defender. Tremendous.
Great physical tools.
Yeah, it's awesome. I am with you. I didn't see that passage, so thank you for bringing that up. But I'm a Chris Braswell fan.
And to our point of Bucs draft athletes, he wasn't in that 9 or above threshold, but that's okay if he's not their top pick.
Right.
It doesn't have to be if he's their second round pick. 6'3", 250, powerhouse player. He's a power physical athlete. Ran a 4.6 40, which is in the 96th percentile of all defensive ends. Verts were they were above average. They weren't great, but they were very good. This guy is a great athlete.
Yeah. I mean, for a second round pick, that's what you look for, right? Still the athletic tools that you want, but also a mix of like upside and ready to play.
Yeah, he very much reminds me of Yaya Diaby. Big power player, great
Yaya's
athlete.
probably got freakier physical tools because of his arms.
He does. Yaya tested as a 9.8 RAS, where Brazel was like a 8.7.
Yeah.
But similar mold player, big power rusher, little raw in terms of hand usage and pass rush moves, but all the tools are there, and his film is good.
Yeah, I like the film as well. I watched it before the Senior Bowl. Yeah, big fan of Chris Braswell, and that would be a great pick in my opinion.
Yeah, don't know if he makes it that far, but
we'll see. Hey.
It's not out of the question.
No, not at all. Am I missing anything?
I think that's it.
I think that is going to do it. Next week, JT and I will be back with a mock off-season. Shout out again, Pewter Report for the idea. They're great at this kind of stuff. You should check them out. If you already don't, that'd be weird if you don't. We'll be coming back with like our plan of how to attack free agency, and then eventually the draft after that, and what we do with that whole situation. So looking
2 weeks
forward
from
to
that, we got free agency.
And 2 weeks from that, we got free agency. So we'll be able to see how we do pretty quickly. But yeah, other than that, not 2 weeks from that, 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now, yeah, it's coming up fast.
2 weeks from now, 1 week from that. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We really appreciate it. JT and I love doing this, and we'll be back next week with another fun episode. So catch y'all next week, and as always, go Bucs.
Go Bucs.